have been confirmed by APHIS. And one morning, we had an injured heifer that I had treated the night before after dark. In the morning, I got up, she had been killed. So I disposed of her. In doing so, drove by a live calf. When I came back, there were 50 vultures on that calf that had killed it, just that quick. And so I spent a substantial amount of time of my day running these birds off and doing things like that. My understanding is that Mr. Swackheimer has a meeting with Tommy Butler scheduled already.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I commend the city for already taking the first step and doing it. In order to remediate this problem, it has to be kind of a cooperation between the producers out here and the city and the United States Department of Agriculture, because it takes a special contract and stuff for them to allow it to come in and control that. Ourselves, as I mentioned, I've spent a lot of time. We have built effigies in order to scare them off, like you've probably heard with crows. We do a lot of harassment throughout the day. They're pretty rare how they show up at our farm. And so it's time that's being taken away from our operation in terms of, and I'm not the only one. There's other farmers and dairies and things out here that are experiencing the same issue. I've also included in a package from Jackson Ag, because they're located right next to where these birds nest below South Street. And so they've quantified, some of the damages they've had, those birds invading their buildings and messing with their equipment and tearing things up as well. And I think they're also supportive of trying to work with the city in terms of doing some type of remediation. And in talking with their managers and ownership, they are offering up their property. They've already cleared trees on the edge of their property, trying to remove some of the nesting sites and things like that, and that would be a good place to set up the entrapment that they use to catch them. I basically just wanted to come here tonight with some awareness so you can understand that, the problem lays not only in the city, because, I attended a viticulture meeting and the residents of South Street were there at an extension meeting, because they have concerns about them. And just hoping that we can work together, and I know that's probably going to cost the city a little bit of money to work with the USDA, and so if we can work together to try to remediate the problem, we're not going to eliminate them, but get rid of some of the trouble that this situation is here in town, and we'll move forward. Thank you for your time. If there's any questions.
Were you able to get permits to?
I have secured a federal permit that allows me to kill up to 10 years. They're estimating that there's about 100 of them here in town, so.
Have you got your pin yet?
No, because I have been chasing for 2 weeks before the permit came, so when I fire up my buggy, that's why I've been hanging effigies. I've made some out of rubber that I hang in the trees and stuff like that, so my new technology is coming, but I've had to spend quite a bit of money to allow me to shoot those. And that's what I have for remediation on our farm. It's just a percentage. Okay.
Other questions of Mr. Fisher?
Okay, well, I'll have communication with the folks from USDA. I'll just be looking forward to how your meeting goes tomorrow when it come up.
Very good.
Thank you. Cameron for stepping in.
No problem.
Thanks. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I had, so on the sign-up sheet, there was a lady by Mrs., last name was Golf, but I don't see her. Yeah, so it may have been, she was thinking of the zoning meeting, I'm not sure. So
I'm guessing that was the fence lady, and I talked to her and explained to her that this is not our issue.
Right, correct. Agreed.
Question about the vultures.
Yes, absolutely.
What will happen? Do we have any idea? Like, you haven't met with them, but like, what's going to come of this? Is it going to be something that's going to be quick? Because after reading that letter in the folder that he gave us, the feed store over there obviously is losing money by them being there.
I met Mr. Fisher last week for the first time, giving me the name of the gentleman from USDA, Tommy Butler. I'd reach out to Tommy, and really is Tommy's coming in at 10:30 tomorrow. Other than that, I have no additional information at this time.
And I will say, from the chair point of view, they do roof destruction, and I've had as many as 7 on the top of my roof, clawed up around my roof, and I've gone up there and thrown balls at them, and just to get them off my roof. I mean, you see them everywhere. So I think, while my destruction is nothing close to what Mr. Fisher's is, having right now, there is residential issues, I think, too, with these vultures and on your personal roof. And from an insurance point of view, it is very destructive. We've had folks, besides Mr. Fisher, who've lost cattle, and it's pretty gruesome. I'll be honest with you, it's pretty gruesome what they do. It's not pretty. I mean, those pictures weren't really as bad as a couple I've seen.
Well, maybe I should add that one picture I just showed the cow. When a heifer lays down the calf, they'll swarm her and move in, and they'll kill that cow while she's calving, and the calf that's coming out of the cow at the same time. It's very gruesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Just one more question. That communication tower that's over there, I mean, I've lived 14 years at my house on South Street, and it seems like year after year after year, but it kind of started when that tower got built. So who owns that? Do we know who owns that? I mean, is there anything they can do to deter those things from roosting up there? I mean,
Yeah, I'm not-
sometimes there's 50 of them on there in the evening, like I can go out there and I can see that from my backyard, and it's just covered with the vultures.
Yeah, I don't know who the property owner is of the tower. I'd have to look on site. I'm sure they probably have a lease to some entity where the tower itself is.
They probably should be involved too, because
Pretty sure the Ag Center owns that property.
they're harboring those things as well.
okay. Well, next on to the approval of the minutes. Each of you received a copy of last meeting's minutes in your board program. Is there any objections or corrections to the minutes as presented to council? Hearing none, the chair would accept a motion to accept. Mr. Newkirk made a motion, second by Ms. Colby. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. We'll now go into committee reports. Utilities, Mr. Newkirk.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Newkirk.
Excuse me, did I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Swackhammer,
Yes, sir.
did you go ahead and order more garbage cans?
Not as of yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting the bill in place, that
Okay.
the actual order has not been in place
Well,
yet.
let me ask you a question. What color are you going with?
The same color, the ones we have, it's a green.
Okay.
Dark green.
Well, just let me throw this,
Grayish,
just
okay.
let me throw this out here. I go to the city of London, Ohio, Crickle. 2 weeks ago, I went down the street trying to save time. Okay. All their garbage cans was out, and they're red. And that's their school colors, red, just like Jackson. And, I'm not a real, but they looked really good. So I don't know what the rest of you thinks about the garbage cans. I'm just throwing that out there. Okay? But Dan, that since, Jackson Schools.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Foster. Budget and Finance, Ms. Colby.
No report.
Thank you, Ms. Colby. Police, Fire, and Traffic, Mr. Foster.
I have nothing.
Mr. Foster. Service, Mr. Peters.
I talked to Seth Stockmeyer to print a revised map for Dora. I'd be bringing that back to committee once we receive it. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Auditor's report, Mr. Reed.
I have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Kirby.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Chief Hinch.
No report.
Thank you, Chief Hinch. Mayor's report, Mayor Evans.
I just want to keep the income tax before everyone. It's very quickly approaching the May 6th date, and we all know how important that is. I told you before that HD and Amanda Crabtree are heading up the Citizens for Jackson this time. They have purchased some new signs. They're available now. They also, as their group, will be distributing door hangers out. So I just encourage council to support it. And anyone that wants to help with getting the word out, or the signs out, or the door hangers out, to reach out to us, get you in touch with HD and Amanda to help promote this income tax. It's going to be, I forget, it's like 7 weeks until the election now, something like that. So it's not long. It'll be here before you know it. And that's all I have tonight.
Questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Schweikhammer.
Yeah, if the mayor doesn't mind, I'm going to follow up with, on the income tax. If you're asked, this is not an additional tax. Please make sure people are aware that our current income tax does expire this year. So all the work we've done on the infrastructure and paving and so forth is going to be defunded without the income tax. And if you look at the water and sewer line cost, now we're having to shift to rates, changing rates in order to continue projects because water and sewer lines continue to decay. And we will have to continue, fixing those if we don't have an income tax. General fund doesn't bring in enough money to do something like that. And I guess don't want to have to address with additional rates. Nobody likes that. Next item. I do want to, I saw an article online that the city of Jackson was holding a scrap tire recycle day on Saturday the 29th at 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. That is actually the Jackson County Health Department is doing that. That is not the city. And it is down at, Main and North High, down by the ball fields. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to the Jackson County Health Department for putting that on every year, usually here and over at Wellston. So I guess we'll make that. Also, it's been publicized both by our site and in the local Telegram news. The Fairmont Cemetery has requested that all the winter decorations be off the graves by the 17th. That's a week from today. I just remind people of that. The city will be doing a live auction again this year down at the impound yard. The auction tentative date as of right now, more to come, would be on the 12th of April at 10 a.m. That will be advertised in more detail later. We did reach out and get estimates and proposals from various organizations that submitted them. We reviewed them, and we selected one based upon what they were offering the city to do it for. I would also, I've got a couple things on the ordinances coming up, but I'll wait and address those at the proper time. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Schweikhammer. Questions for the service director? Mr. Bob?
Is there a scheduled citywide cleanup?
The last ones we have done have usually been around the 1st of May, I believe, or late April timeframe. Just a swing into spring or type thing.
I was asking,
Yeah.
I told him I'd talk with you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I haven't actually talked to the garbage department because that's usually the time that we waive the additional fees and stuff during that week. Thank you for bringing that up.
Other additional questions for the service director? Thank you, Mr. Schweikhammer. At this point in our agenda, we will move into the ordinances and resolutions portion of our meeting. We will begin with ordinance 06-2025, second reading. Ms. Coon?
An ordinance repealing the City of Jackson, Ohio zoning regulations dated May 1983 and its subsequent amendments, and hereby adopting and enacting a modern code of zoning regulations.
Discussion. Mr. Schweikhammer?
Yes. During the first reading, there was a couple items that were brought up. One was the section around the maps. We had one down off Gay Street and some of the other areas. The maps have been updated based on the feedback we had gotten from council and from the planning commission. I believe Ms. Kuhn had sent those out a week or so ago. At the same time, as part of that discussion last week, there was some questions around the verbiage around the code enforcement officer. In the old, or in the new legislation, they had called that a zoning inspector. And I went back and asked them, because the code enforcement officer is what we have clear throughout all of our ordinances. So they have updated that, and that new document, it was also part of what Cindy sent out. So I'm going to ask somebody from council to make a motion to accept both the new map and the new zoning regulations because of changing in some verbiage, as well as the map updates as they were requested.
The chair has just one question. Are we talking about ordinance 07-2025 for the revision on the code officer? And then I think the map would go with ordinance 06-2025, am I right? Or
06 would be with the map and for the legislation changes because it was changed back to the code enforcement. So I'm asking for 06 to have both changes in it.
Mr. President, if we make those amendments, are we going to stay on second reading?
You can do it a couple ways. So if you make the amendments now, generally that would go as a second reading. You could suspend the rule and still move on to third reading.
Or can we suspend on third?
You can suspend on third as well.
So 06-2025 needs to accept the map changes?
I think the map that Mr. Kirby has here that was used for tonight, I believe this is what Cindy had prepared for us tonight as the new map.
Yeah, I sent it out, and then there's just that one copy of it.
Yeah, I think this is in your email, Mr. Newkirk's guy's email. And then, so we're adopting this map, and then we would also then adopt the description of.
Well, you just adopt the whole book again with the changes.
I'm sorry?
They're separate. So we're still on second reading of 06-25, correct?
Yes.
We haven't moved to 07. 07 is
We
the
have
one
not.
that has the zoning, does it have to be set, no, it's going to have to be separate. I'm confused.
The maps are part of the new zoning regulations. It's
Yeah.
all one. So by making your motion and those changes, it's all one now. 07 is a separate piece. We haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, 07, and that was, I apologize if I've created some confusion, but I had notes that was talking about revisions for the code enforcement officer. I thought 06 was for the map. I didn't know we would also be changing and implementing a definition on the code officer. Am I correct? We need two revisions. Then what you're saying is we need a revision for the map and a revision for the code officer.
Right, to swap those out with the revisions that was requested in the map.
In 06.
In 06.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's what we're looking for.
Part of 07.
No,
Part of 07.
they're both part of 06.
So we need, is there a motion to adopt this map as part of ordinance 06-2025?
This is just changing out the old map for the new map.
I will move to accept the updated map for 06-2025.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I'll third.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Now, the second part of discussion is the changing of the description. What do you call it, a description?
Yes, throughout the zoning manual, What we knew as the code enforcement officer was referenced as the zoning inspector throughout the whole book. And to stay current with all of our ordinances, it was easier to change back in the newly drafted zoning book, and I had him replace zoning inspector with code enforcement officer, so it aligned with all of our ordinances. So I'm asking to adopt those updates, which was in the new zoning regulations, and replace the old one that referenced it as a zoning inspector.
Okay. So the chair is asking for a motion then to change the verbiage to code enforcement officer from zoning inspector.
It's not changing the verbiage, just adopting the new manual that was sent out with the new map.
Thank you, Mr. Schweikemiller. Is there a motion?
And this is being accepted on 0625.
Correct.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Elliott, is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Young, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. So I have one quick question before we move from 06. So as amended, 06-2025 will go to third reading with these amendments.
It'll go to third reading, and then somebody can make a motion to suspend rules, because without suspending rules, it would go second reading again next week.
Okay.
And then third reading the following week.
Okay.
But you can suspend that rule by going to a third reading.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby, for clarification. Next, second reading, ordinance 02-2025. Ms. Kuhn?
07. Yeah.
An ordinance repealing and amending the City of Jackson's codified ordinance sections and cross-references to reflect the changes in the newly adopted Code of Zoning Regulations.
Discussion. Mr. Schweikemiller?
Yeah, there was some questions around the first part of that one, around the code enforcement officer. I've addressed that one, but as we started looking deeper into some of these, they're not as defined as well as our codified ordinances. So I'm going to make the recommendation we table this. The codified ordinances are much more, I'll say much more defined on what's allowed and what's not. I don't see any reason to make those changes. And if council wants Mr. Kirby or someone to look at them, that's fine. But what I looked up in the zoning manual and then what I looked up in the codified ordinances, they just didn't seem to have quite the same language and enforceability, and that was just my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Schweikemiller. Other discussion? Mr. Peters?
Yeah, rather than table it, can we suspend the rules and just vote it down? So we can come back without?
I would be fine with that. I would appreciate
I would
that.
feel more comfortable if that's the route that we're gonna go, is suspend the rules and vote it down, no, and then bring back a clean, fresh
Yes.
ordinance rather than to muddy it more by trying to use this one. So I'll move to suspend the rules to take a vote so we can eliminate this ordinance 07-2025.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Second by Mr. Newkirk. Any further discussion? Ms. Kuhn?
Foster,
Vote no.
you're voting to suspend the rules.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Elliott? Colby? Yes. Peters?
Yes.
Newkirk? Yes. Young? Yes. Bob?
Yes.
Discussion. Ms. Kuhn?
Bob? Foster?
Yes. No.
Do you want- How do you want to vote? Elliott?
Trying to read here.
Peters?
No.
Newkirk? Young? No. Bob?
Maybe.
Ordinance 07-2025 has failed. Next, ordinance 08-2025, second reading. Ms. Coon?
An ordinance approving additional appropriations in the Visitor Center Expense Fund and declaring an emergency.
Discussion. Mr. Reed?
It's up to council. This is just money that was taken in last year. You have it get off the table, or you can wait till next meeting. Okay.
Mr. Peters?
My question is, we do have a visitor board meeting on the 31st. If we do allow this to go to the 24th meeting for third reading, is that money allocated by then, or are we waiting 30 days? Or that should
It's
be...
got an emergency in it, it would happen the next day. As soon as I get it signed, we'll move it.
Okay. I don't see there any reason to hold off. We're gonna have a meeting to award the fund. Let's go ahead and, I'll move to suspend the rules, to move the $12,911.03, to meet the time frame for the awards meeting on the 31st.
Second by Mr. Newkirk. Further discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Colby. Yes. Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Young. Yes. Bach.
Yes.
Discussion. Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Colby. Yes. Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Young. Bach.
Yes.
Ordinance 08-2025 is duly adopted. Next, for council consideration, ordinance 10-2025. Yeah, should be a resolution on the ordinance, though. I'm sorry if I, one second, I'm sorry if I,
Is it
that is correct,
resolution?
no, that is correct. No, I'm sorry, I looked at it incorrectly. It's ordinance 10-2025, I apologize. First reading.
An ordinance authorizing the Service and Safety Director to advertise for sale and to sell to the highest and best bidder certain equipment now owned by the city but no longer needed for a municipal purpose under RC Section 721.15 and declaring an emergency.
Could I have a motion to adopt ordinance 10-2025 as it's printed? Mr. Peters, second. Ms. Colby? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Discussion. Mr. Swackhammer.
Yes, these are 3 mowers that we have taken out of service due to not being able to get safety parts for them, and we cannot maintain them in a manner that is safe for our employees to use.
Mr. Swackhammer. Other discussion?
Mr. President, I'll move to suspend the rules for sale of the equipment.
Motion by Mr. Peters. Is there a second? Ms. Colby? Discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby. Yes. Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Young. Bach.
Yes.
Further discussion?
An ordinance repealing in its entirety the City of Jackson's codified ordinance section 733.02 regarding alarm permits.
Could I have a motion to adopt ordinance 11-2025 as presented to council? Mr. Newkirk, is there a second? Mr. Bob? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Discussion.
Fire department can't ever remember using it. Mr. Hinch said for 20-some years that the permitting process itself has never been used. And so it's starting to bring up some questions because it's still on our books, and with new businesses and so forth moving in, I think it had $1 a year charge for it. We couldn't even set up a permitting process, so we've operated without it for that long. So that's why
pretty much ignored this without any repercussions. If there are alarm holders in the city, residential or commercial, that falsely call make those contacts directly, and we may inform somebody, listen, we're not going to come anymore until you've gotten there or you've sent somebody and they've discovered that there's a problem. Sometimes we work with them in getting the issues fixed. It could be a motion sensor with a balloon that's flopping for a sale or something like that. We try to address those issues as they come up case by case, but alarms, running to false alarms, needing to be the council, the city, the police department, and I'd probably fire department same way, involved in what people do in their businesses or residences to help give extra alerts. It's not something that I feel like we need to be directly involved in. It's not bothering us.
Thank you, Chief. Any other discussion? Mr. Peters?
So by repealing this, though, if there is a nuisance business or residence, what teeth do we have to make it stop? Because if you call the fire department, how are you going to sell the fire department if they can't show up if someone calls?
So there is a section of the Ohio Revised Code called making false alarms. It's a first degree misdemeanor. I don't know the section right off the top of my head. But it is, I think it may be the 2917 section. It says, basically if somebody's intentionally doing it, we can charge them for it. If they're accidental, again, it may be one of those systems that if, I'll give you an instance. Decade ago, so it's not an issue now, so I'm not compromising anybody's business. Tractor Supply used to leave all their stuff outside and have them all cabled. We'd get the front cable alarm, you could almost set your watch by it, like 3:35 at night. And so then we'd go to Tractor Supply. We eventually went and talked to Tractor Supply and said, we're not coming to that either until you get your problem, because there's obviously a problem, you get it fixed. They eventually get it fixed. Fire, I would say the same thing. There are fire alarms that go off. Hotels are notorious for having a fire alarm go off. Maybe somebody smoked in a room that they shouldn't have been. We get dispatched typically as well. They get canceled. Again, I don't see that as a false alarm. Something set it off. Sometimes a hot shower will set off a smoke alarm that calls automatically. But it's alerting that there's something there, and then that's what we want alarms to do. Not confirm, we have to wait till this thing's 35% engulfed in flames before we're going to put the call out, so that we don't get charged a $100 fee. We've never sent the mail out to charge for a false alarm. Ever.
Just one other thing, thank you. One other thing, back before, another time and place, when we were really unsure about having a tax to pay for things, there was a lot of discussion about some of these things. So other cities do charge for this, and maybe we just put it on the back burner here, because we may need to go back to it later if our funding is different in the future, so.
And if I may, yeah, and this one that's before you now is just the permit process. That's the only thing that's before us tonight.
Any other discussion on ordinance 11, 2025?
Mr. President, I'll move to suspend the rules to eliminate this section 33.02 as it regards to the permitting process. That way we have some sort of compliance where law enforcement can continue to do their job.
Is there a second? Mr. Elliott, second? Discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Colby. Yes. Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk. Young. Bob.
Yes.
Discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Colby. Yes. Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Young. Bob.
Ordinance 11, 2025 is duly adopted. This concludes our time in the ordinance and resolutions portion of our meeting. I thank council for their work. Next on our agenda is correspondence. Ms. Coon?
Just a reminder, or if you didn't get the text or the email, there is a fraud training that's required from the Auditor of State and I need your certificates, and 4 people came and did it with me tonight, and I'll be getting their certificates printed, but you need to do it on your own. Get that to me ASAP. And then also update, the iPads are in, and Darren, our IT guy, is working on that for us.
Thank you, Ms. Good.
Is there a link to the training?
There is a link, and it has disappeared out of my email, so maybe Mr. Slackhammer can get that sent to me.
Remind me in the morning and I'll shoot it over
I've
to
been trying to
you.
find it so I can, because I have to log each of these guys in and get a certificate.
Thank you.
Yes.
Old business, is there any old business that needs to come before council this evening?
Mr. President, I'll be brief. After our committee meeting, I reached out to Mr. Butcher, who was in the gallery, and asked him some specific questions. I think there's a copy of the email that I sent to Mr. Butcher. I think it was in our packet. I brought my own, so. Biggest portion, I think, is paragraph 2. It says, "My other guidance to the city was that testing or a structured process for unclassified positions is still recommended. It helps to get the right person in the job based upon job-related criteria valued by the city." Also, finding out for the first time, and I was, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us were here in 2022, 5 of us, when the civil service guidelines were revised. I was completely unaware of this. I did get a copy of those. There's a codified ordinance from 1962 establishing the Civil Service Board Commission. I would have expected that revision to be amended to that ordinance, so at least there's a public reference to that. I can email it out, or you can find it maybe from the administration if you don't do email. But I think that's kind of something that probably should have been brought to council's attention at the time, and it wasn't. Because I don't have it, I didn't know about it, and I do pay attention, so it didn't happen. I would ask if Mr. Kirby thinks that that should be adopted, or just leave it be without the public being able to find it without requesting it, as an amendment, because it is a codified ordinance with no reference to the revisions of 2022. It's dated 1962.
I'll have to look at the new one. I don't think I did that one.
Okay. Just to keep moving, I'll get with you on that. I did request a copy of the Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual, which is a manual set aside for hourly city employees. There were a couple of sections that I just wanted to bring attention to the council in regards. One of them is nepotism. I laugh every time I see that, as it relates to the way we do business sometimes around here. But the section, right below that is section 3.11, outside employment / conflict of interest. So I'll read, there's only a couple of points here, but I'll read this. Like I said, this is just for council's thoughts and consideration. Section A, under no circumstances shall an employee have other employment which conflicts with policies, objectives, and operations of the city. Under this policy, employment conflicts are defined as the impairment of an employee's ability to perform the duties of his or her position with the city. 2 common employment conflicts which may arise. 1, time conflict. When the working hours required of a secondary job directly conflict with the scheduled working hours of an employee's position with the city, or when the demands of the secondary job prohibit adequate rest, thereby adversely affecting the quality and standard of the employee's job performance with the city. The second one's an interest conflict, which wouldn't apply. full-time employment with the city shall be considered the employee's primary occupation, taking precedent over other occupations. It goes on to talk about outside employment called moonlighting, which, if it's a concern of the service director, he constitutes the conflict of interest. Should the service director feel the employee's outside employment is adversely affecting the employee's job performance, he or she may request that the employee refrain from such activity. So these are all these questions that I brought up in that meeting in regards to, in a sense, moonlighting between city employees and the fire department. The other part is in section 3.1 or 3.13 time records. There's a policy, if an employee has used sick leave, vacation, personal day earned, overtime, or other special uses of earnings or time, the proper documentation needs to be also submitted. The electronic timekeeping system by supervisors to document the hours worked, employees' wages, blah, blah, blah. Failure to adhere to reporting procedures adopted by the supervisor may result in lost pay, hours worked, and question, and possibly disciplinary action. So this just makes it more money, in my opinion, because all the other city employees have to follow this for their secondary jobs. And it's clearly stated in here, but we're going to make an exception for the other cases. It's not a great practice. I'll circle back to the email from Mr. Butcher in regards to the positions which are now unclassified. I would like to see us, as a group, reclassify those two positions. We've heard over and over that there's not enough money to pay them or whatever, but I also would like to see those two positions be full-time positions. Do we have a wand where we can just make that happen? No. But we need to be moving in that direction, and I think that's a good base to start. What we'll eventually need is a day shift, fire department, volunteers, and part-time after hours. With saying that, I would also ask the administration, what's the end game here if the chief does not return to work? We've appointed 3 interim positions at this point. According to what we've been told, or what we haven't been told, is if they stay in those positions for 180 days, then that's their position. So we have 2 interim assistant chiefs now. So if they're in that spot for 180 days, are they both assuming the assistant chief position, even though ordinance calls for 1? So I would say we need to test for these positions. This needs to be a non-political position. That's what civil service is for, to protect the public service and safety workers from politics. So whether or not you guys want to do the test, we need some answers for this.
I mean, you haven't liked the answers I've given you before. I provided the guidelines when we went through the interim process. Mr. Butcher, and his recommendation to me was what I provided to you guys at that time met all the requirements. The testing, these positions, the hiring or the not of these volunteers, right now, that is not council's purview. And I totally disagree with you that I believe we will find that civil service did bring that to council back in '22.
Okay, does anyone sitting here remember receiving that civil service revisions in 2022?
Because if I remember right, Mr. Peters, you said that you were absent at the time it went through, or therefore you would have had a lot more questions.
That's possible, but I never saw it, and it also is not amended on any document that you can search online. That's my beef. My beef is left, legal, ethical, fair, transparent. That doesn't mean any of those if the public can't find it. And if a city member of the council can't locate it without asking 5 times. So I think what he's trying to say is, you keep saying that if we do not handle admin, hiring and firing, that's not our job. We understand that. But we are here to put guidelines in place and guide rails to stop giving you too much power. That's what this is about. This is about checks and balances. This is how government works. So I am merely saying that the process that we have in place doesn't work. It's not going to work. It's not.
I think that's opinionated.
Okay, well, what do you guys think? Do you think what we have, the system where, well, we're not going to test, even this attorney says, my other guidance to the city was that testing or a structured process of unclassified is still recommended. So we get the best people. What we've done is we've turned this into a political appointment. Because if they walk off tomorrow and say, I quit, whoever sits in that chair can walk down there and just clean house. Is that what we want? Is that what you want? I don't think so. So that may be my opinion, but speak up if you disagree. You think that should be a political appointment? Or that should be a safe job where someone can come in, the most qualified person, do their job, and not listen to the BS of the politics. That's what civil service is. That's why it's there. That's why they're protected. I'll leave it at that, because I feel like it's kind of getting personal at this point, and that's not where I'm going with this. I raised out my hand and took an oath of office, and that's what I'm going by. So if you don't like my opinion, that's perfectly fine. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Other discussion? Mr. Evans?
If the civil service stuff is not available, that's an easy fix. It should be. I assume it was online. Certainly it's available in our office if it's not. We'll correct that because it should be available. Anybody who wants to see it. Also want to say that the changes that were made to it in 22, I don't know whether you saw them or not. I don't know. But they were all made at the recommendation of council's legal representative Clemens and Nelson. Regarding the political appointments, I think is what you called it. When we selected the interim officers that we have right now, we went through a process evaluating them that Clemens and Nelson told us was as good as the same process that would qualify as a testing for civil service. And we went through that. There was nothing political about it. We chose the best candidates that we had. There was no political in it at all from our end. That's all.
Any Evans, other discussion?
One more question, Mr. President. Does the council have the authority to require those positions to be tested?
As long as they remain unclassified, it would have to be changed.
So we could reclassify those 2 positions and require a test.
If there's a reclassification, then it would follow the revised code.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Other discussion? Hearing none, any other old business to come before the council? Hearing none, new business, I think we have to schedule a BOZA meeting, next council meeting. Mr. Elliott and I are correct here, we have a public hearing at 6 o'clock in regards to zoning, and then Mr. Elliott had said at 6:30 we would have a BOZA meeting. Correct. There are 2 issues that will come before the zoning committee. And Mr. Elliott, if you want to give a report possibly on the meeting prior that we had this evening?
Well, we passed three different ones. That's about all I want to say on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott.
I don't think I've ever been so confused in all my life, but we did it.
Mr. Elliott. Any other new business to come before council? Before we adjourn, I want to thank Ms. Colby for the cookies. Appreciate that. Hearing nothing else, the chair would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Ms. Colby, second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We stand in adjournment.